Daily Fluent English. Minimalist Living.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Daily Fluent English. I'm your host, Olivia, and today we're exploring a topic that has transformed my life and the lives of millions around the world: minimalist living. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by clutter, stressed about possessions, or simply curious about how to live more intentionally with less, I encourage you to stay with me until the end of this episode. Studying today's content will help you develop vocabulary related to minimalism, decluttering, and intentional living in English. You'll learn practical phrases for discussing lifestyle choices, explaining your values, and navigating conversations about consumption and materialism. These language skills will not only enhance your English fluency, but may also inspire you to consider how simplicity might bring more clarity and joy to your own life. Minimalism is much more than a design aesthetic or a trendy lifestyle hashtag. At its core, it's about identifying what truly adds value to your life and eliminating the rest. Today, I'll share my personal journey with minimalism, introduce useful vocabulary for discussing simple living in English, and present a conversation example to help you explore these concepts confidently with others.
Main content.
My journey toward minimalism began about 5 years ago during a particularly stressful period in my life. I had just moved to a larger apartment, thinking that more space would solve my organizational problems. Instead, I found myself surrounded by more stuff than ever before, yet feeling strangely empty. One weekend, exhausted from a long work week, I surveyed my living room filled with unopened shopping bags, decorative items that required constant dusting, and bookshelves overflowing with books I'd never read. I realized that instead of bringing me joy, my possessions had become a source of anxiety and overwhelm. That weekend, I stumbled upon a documentary about minimalism that resonated deeply with me. The film explored how our culture of consumerism often leads to debt, stress, and environmental harm while rarely delivering the happiness it promises. I was struck by the peace and intentionality with which the featured minimalists lived their lives. They owned fewer things, but seemed to extract more meaning and joy from what they kept. Inspired, I decided to embark on my own decluttering journey. I started small, tackling my wardrobe first. I removed everything from my closet and evaluated each item using what minimalists often call the joy test, asking myself whether each piece brought me joy or served a genuine purpose in my life. To my surprise, I ended up donating nearly 70% of my clothes, items I'd been saving for someday, or keeping out of guilt because they were expensive but never worn, now had the chance to be useful to someone else. The immediate effect was unexpected. Every morning, I opened my closet to see only clothes that I truly enjoyed wearing. The decision fatigue that had plagued my mornings disappeared, and getting dressed became a simple pleasure rather than a stressful chore. This initial success motivated me to continue the process throughout my home. The kitchen came next. I discovered I had accumulated 5 different spatulas, multiple sets of dishes, and specialty gadgets I'd used once or twice at most. As I simplified my kitchen tools to only those I regularly used, cooking became more enjoyable. I no longer had to dig through cluttered drawers to find what I needed, and cleaning up after meals became faster and less daunting. Perhaps the most challenging area was my collection of sentimental items: photographs, letters, souvenirs, and gifts. Unlike utilitarian objects, these carried emotional weight and memories. I learned to distinguish between true sentimental treasures and items I was keeping out of obligation. For photographs, I created a digital archive, preserving the memories while eliminating physical clutter. For special mementos, I selected a few meaningful pieces to display rather than keeping boxes of items hidden away in storage. As my physical space became clearer, I noticed shifts in other areas of my life as well. I became more intentional about how I spent my time and energy, saying no to commitments that didn't align with my values or priorities. I reconsidered my spending habits, asking myself before each purchase whether the item would truly enhance my life. My financial situation improved as impulse buying decreased, and I found myself saving for experiences rather than things. One unexpected benefit was the positive environmental impact of my lifestyle changes. By consuming less, repairing items instead of replacing them, and being thoughtful about what I brought into my home, my ecological footprint decreased significantly. I began to see minimalism not just as a personal preference, but as an ethical choice with broader implications. Of course, minimalism looks different for everyone. I didn't adopt an extreme approach. I still own books, decorative items that genuinely bring me joy, and tools for my hobbies. My version of minimalism isn't about deprivation or living with a specific number of items. It's about thoughtfulness and intention. I learned that the goal isn't to own as little as possible, but to own exactly what supports my well-being and values. My friends and family had mixed reactions to my lifestyle change. Some were inspired and asked for help with their own decluttering projects. Others seemed almost defensive, as if my choice to own less was an implicit criticism of their lifestyle. These interactions taught me valuable lessons about communicating my choices without judgment and respecting that each person's journey is unique. A common misconception I've encountered is that minimalism is only accessible to the privileged, those who can afford to replace multiple cheap items with one quality piece, or who have the luxury of time to carefully curate their possessions. While privilege certainly plays a role in how minimalism is practiced, I believe its core principles can be adapted to various life circumstances. At its heart, minimalism is about questioning cultural assumptions about consumption and finding what enough means for you. Today, my home contains significantly fewer possessions than it did 5 years ago, but it feels more abundant in what matters: space, peace, and purpose. I no longer spend weekends organizing stuff or feel anxious about maintaining and cleaning my possessions. The time and mental energy I've reclaimed has allowed me to deepen relationships, pursue creative projects, and engage more fully with my community. Minimalism has taught me that true wealth isn't measured by what we own, but by the quality of our experiences and relationships. By simplifying the external aspects of my life, I've created space for internal richness, clarity about my values, freedom from comparison, and a deeper appreciation for simple pleasures. I believe that in our increasingly complex and fast-paced world, the principles of minimalism offer a countercultural path to well-being. By intentionally choosing less, we often gain more of what truly matters. These experiences have completely transformed how I view possessions and consumption. While minimalism isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, I've found that its principles of intentionality and value-based choices create space for what matters most. Now, let's listen to a conversation example where two friends discuss their different approaches to minimalist living.
Conversation example.
I noticed your new apartment is so empty. Did you just move in?
Actually, I've been here for 3 months. I've been embracing minimalism lately, so I'm being really intentional about what I bring into my space.
Minimalism? You mean like those people who only own 100 things and live in tiny houses?
That's one extreme version, but minimalism can look different for everyone. For me, it's about only keeping things that serve a purpose or bring me genuine joy. It's not about depriving myself, it's about making room for what matters.
Interesting. I've always found comfort in being surrounded by my things. My collection of travel souvenirs. All my books, they represent memories and parts of my identity.
I totally understand that. I used to feel the same way. But I realized I was spending so much time organizing, cleaning, and maintaining my possessions that I had less time for experiences that I value, like hiking or spending time with friends.
I never thought about it that way. I do spend most of my Sundays just tidying up and organizing. So what was your process like? Did you just throw everything away one day?
No, it was gradual. I started with easy categories like duplicate kitchen items and clothes I never wore. The KonMari method was helpful, where you gather all items from one category and only keep what sparks joy.
I've heard of that. But what about sentimental items? I'd find that really hard.
Those were definitely the most challenging. For some things, like concert tickets and travel photos, I created digital archives. For others, I kept a few meaningful pieces rather than entire collections. It gets easier with practice, and I found that the memories aren't in the objects themselves, they're within us.
That makes sense. But doesn't it get expensive? I mean, don't you end up having to rebuy things you've gotten rid of?
That's a common misconception. I actually save money now because I'm much more thoughtful about purchases. I ask myself questions like, do I truly need this? Will it add value to my life? Could I borrow this instead of buying it? I found I can live comfortably with much less than I thought.
I can see the appeal, especially the financial benefits. My closet is full of impulse purchases with tags still attached. What's been the biggest change you've noticed since adopting minimalism?
Definitely my mental clarity. When my physical space is clear, my mind feels clearer too. I'm less anxious, more focused, and I find it easier to make decisions. Plus, cleaning my apartment now takes minutes instead of hours.
That sounds really liberating. I'm not sure I could go as minimal as you have, but I'm inspired to at least clear out some of the clutter in my life. Maybe I'll start with that junk drawer in the kitchen that's so full I can barely open it.
That's a perfect place to start. Remember, minimalism isn't about following strict rules or meeting someone else's standards. It's about finding your own version of enough and creating space for what truly matters to you.
I like that approach. Maybe I'll try tackling one small area this weekend and see how it feels. Who knows? This could be the beginning of my own minimalist journey.
That's the spirit. And if you need any help or moral support during your decluttering, I'm happy to assist. Just don't expect me to let you bring all your discards to my place.
Deal. Though I might need your help deciding what actually sparks joy versus what I'm just keeping out of habit.
Listening to Jamie and Taylor's conversation, I appreciate how they explore minimalism as a spectrum rather than an absolute. Notice the vocabulary they use like intentional, spark joy, and decluttering. These terms are commonly used when discussing minimalist living in English. I particularly like how Taylor emphasizes that minimalism is personalized and focused on creating space for what matters most to each individual, rather than following rigid rules about how many items to own. The exchange also highlights how discussing lifestyle choices, like minimalism, requires both vocabulary for practical aspects, decluttering, organizing, and the ability to express values and personal philosophy in English. These language skills are valuable whether you're sharing your own lifestyle choices or simply understanding different perspectives. I hope today's episode has equipped you with useful vocabulary and given you food for thought about minimalist living. Whether you're inspired to declutter your own space or simply want to be able to discuss lifestyle choices in English, these language skills will serve you well in conversations with native speakers. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with friends who are learning English or interested in intentional living. And keep an eye out for our next episode, where we'll continue exploring practical topics that enhance both your English fluency and your life experiences. Until next time, this is Olivia from Daily Fluent English, wishing you clarity and simplicity in both your language learning and your living space. Take care!